Hello guys, in today's video I want to tackle one of the most important things when it comes to your study permit application, and this is one of the things that most people get wrong when it comes to their study permit application, which leads to a rejection. If you are planning to apply to Canada for a study permit to allow you to study, one of the things that you need to pay close attention to is your proof of funds of support, because it's one of the things that the visa officers look out for. If you can't prove that you can take care of yourself and pay your tuition fee, then you are definitely going to get a rejection on your study permit application. This is a very important component when it comes to your study permit application, and it is very important that you get it right to be able to get your study permit approved. In this video, I will guide you through a step-by-step process to allow you to show your proof of funds and prove that you have enough proof of funds to allow you to study in Canada, which will help you get approval on your study permit application. The first step is know the required amount. You need to know the required amount that you need to show for your study permit application. And remember that no two people are the same, because depending on the school that you are going to, depending on how you are applying for your study permit, whether you are applying as a single person or you are applying with a spouse, you will have different amounts that you need to show. And even if you are applying for yourself, your spouse and your children, you will be required to show a different kind of amount. So to be able to successful at this point, you need to know the required amount that you need to show when it comes to your study permit application. The minimum required amount on the Canadian government's website when it comes to study permit application is that you prove that you have enough funds to pay for your first year tuition fee, plus a $10,000 to prove that you have enough funds to take care of yourself whilst you are studying. And all this information is available on the Canadian government website. So as an applicant, the onus lies on you to at least do the research, check it out, and know your minimum requirement when it comes to your application, because submitting anything below that will get your study permit rejected. So for example, if you're a student going to a university and your tuition fee for the year is, let's say, $12,000, that means that the minimum that you need to show if you are applying for just yourself is to have that $12,000 in your account plus an extra $10,000. And that should be the minimum in your account to prove that you have enough proof of funds for your study for that particular course. According to the Canadian website, if you are applying with your spouse, you will need an extra $4,000 on top of that. So that means that if you are applying for that course and your tuition fee is $12,000, in addition to the extra $10,000 that you need to show an additional $4,000 if your spouse is coming along with you. And for any additional family member who is coming along with you, you will need an extra $3,000 to show for it. So one thing you have to be mindful of is the fact that depending on the number of people who are coming with you, the amount that you will need to show for your proof of funds is going to be different. And also depending on the course that you are undertaking, your required amount will be different. Also be mindful of the fact that just because they are asking you to show a minimum requirement when it comes to the funds, does not mean that you just calculate and show the bare minimum, because apart from your tuition fee, there are other expenses that you will incur. My advice always is to make sure that there's an extra 10K on top of whatever you are showing, so that will prove that you have enough to cater for yourself and also enough left in your account for emergencies. And also to show that you have enough proof of funds, you can use any of the following documents as evidence. One, you can show your bank statements, and with this they require that you show a minimum of 4 months bank statements. But my personal advice is make sure you can show about 6 months, so that they can see that all your history is in there. So even though they are asking for 4 months, if you have 4 months, you can just show for it. But if possible, you can stretch yourself and show 6 months of proof of funds when it comes to your bank statements. You can also use guarantee investment certificates, that's GIC. Basically with the GIC, you can open it with most of the banks in Canada and deposit the amount of money that you want to at least put towards your education in it. What that one does is it proves to the visa officer that at least you've secured the money and it's currently in the Canadian bank account. So that money is really available to you for your studies. And when you move over to Canada, that money will be released to you in installments. And in most cases, GICs will cover the first year of your studies in Canada. So basically, it will meet the requirements when it comes to showing your proof of funds for the first year. You can also use scholarships. So if the school that you are applying to has offered you any scholarship, or any other institution is offering you scholarship for your studies in Canada, you can use that scholarship to show as your proof of funds, at least to the visa officer. And you need to show all the documents that prove that that scholarship is actually offering you that particular money for your studies. However, with the scholarship, you need to show documents that show the amount of money that will be available to you for that scholarship, the duration, and how that money will be dispersed to you whilst you are in Canada. And also, you can use students' loans as proof of funds when it comes to studying in Canada. And there are different forms of students' loans available. One popular one that's available to most Africans is Empower loans. If you are lucky enough to get one of those, because you are going to a particular institution that qualifies for Empower loans, you need to show to the visa officer that at least you've secured loans to take care of yourself whilst you are studying in Canada, because they allow students to use students' loans to take care of themselves whilst they are studying in Canada. And just like the scholarship, you need to show documentation that tells the visa officer the amount of money that you've secured, whether you have secured enough money to cover your whole tuition fee or just enough to cover part of your tuition fee, how that money will be dispensed, and over what duration you are getting that loan for, so that they know that you have secured that particular loan to take care of yourself. So if you are somebody who actually needs money to take care of yourself once you are studying in Canada, and you don't have any sponsors to support you through your studies, you can explore Empower possibly as an option to take care of yourself. They are not sponsoring this video. At least I know a couple of people who have used it to move to Canada, and they are close to me, so at least I can tell you it's something that genuinely works. So you can look into it if you are somebody who needs funds. When showing your proof of funds, make sure that every document that you have, if it's in any language besides English or French, make sure at least it's translated by a certified translator into English or French before you present them, because those are the two languages that are recognized by the IRCC. The second step is to choose the right documents. Beyond just knowing the amount of funds that you need to show when it comes to your study permit application and meeting the minimum requirements, and also knowing the kind of documents that you need to present to IRCC, you need to choose the right documents to at least support your proof of funds and demonstrate that you have that money available to you. That's one mistake that I have seen a lot of applicants do. Beyond just the documents that at least I listed earlier that you can use to prove that you have proof of funds available to you, there are other things that you can do at least to make sure that your documents are in the right format, and at least it's easier for the visa officer to interpret your proof of funds. Because if they cannot make sense of the documents that you've shared, or they feel that they need to get clarity or other things, that might either delay your study permit application or possibly get you refused. When choosing the right documents to show your proof of funds, these are factors that I advise that you consider, at least to make their work easy, to be able to interpret your proof of funds documents and go ahead to approve your study permit. Number one is make sure your documents are in the acceptable formats. The IRCC accepts just particular group of documents as proof of funds when it comes to study permit application, and they've listed all these documents on their websites. And there are two forms of languages that they want those documents to be in, that's English and French. So as an applicant, make their work easier by just going by exactly what they are telling you to do, and the language that the documents are supposed to be in, you at least go by those accordingly. If there is a requirement for translation, you do all those to make sure that documents can easily be interpreted by that visa officer. With bank statements, beyond just it being in English or French, they require that it's an official bank statement on a letterhead with the account owner's name, the account owner's number, and the bank's logo. And they should be able to read all the transactions in that particular bank statement. Secondly, make sure that at least your proof of funds documents are in the right currency. My advice is always make sure that at least you convert your proof of funds from your local currency to the Canadian dollar in the documents that you are submitting based on the exchange rate at the time that you are submitting your application, and make sure you quote that particular exchange rate so that the visa officer going through your documents understand how you came about the total number. I've seen a couple of students submit their proof of funds in their local currency at the time that they were submitting the application, only to find out that later the money that they put in there has actually been depreciated. A typical example was for students who were applying from Ghana last year in September. People put in the applications in September, and at that time the exchange rates, the CD to the dollar or even to the Canadian dollar, was somewhere around 6. So that means you just need enough Ghana cedis to meet the minimum requirements. And in a month, you found out that the CD has depreciated, and now it's around somewhere around 9, 10, 11 thereabouts. So that means if you didn't convert it in your document, now that particular visa officer reviewing your document will choose the exchange rate to convert it to, and he'll be using the prevailing exchange rate at that time, which means your funds will not actually meet the minimum requirement, even though the time you put in your application, it would have met it accordingly. So make sure you do all those conversions to the Canadian dollars in your document so that it will tell the right story on your behalf. The third thing that you need to pay close attention to is the source of your funds. Most applicants make the mistake of feeling that I can just show the amount of money and that will just be enough. The IRCC team cares more about the source of your funds because they care about money laundering. They want to make sure that the money that you are getting is actually genuine and actually legitimate money that is coming to you. So as an applicant, you need to go the extra mile to demonstrate that the source of the funds that you are getting is actually genuine. If it's your family member who is sponsoring you, you can do well to add proof of how the person gets their money. Well, if it's a salary employee, you can add their pay slips or even their employment letter. If the person is self-employed, you can add documents to show the business the person actually runs, to show that that money is actually genuine coming to you, so you can prove the source of that money. And one thing that I advise most students to do is always add a letter of explanation of proof of funds to the proof of fund documents that you are submitting, so that you can explain yourself to the visa officer, because you are not standing in front of the visa officer for him to ask you questions about your documents. Number 4 is always pay close attention to the timing. Always make sure that the proof of funds that you are showing actually demonstrates your financial situation at the time of application. The advice is always make sure that your bank statement that you are submitting is actually within the last 4 months before you submit your application. Anything before might get you into trouble. Make sure that you are showing the most recent document as possible to show them that your current situation at the time of application is this, so that they will know that you are financially solvent to be able to study in Canada. It is also essential to know that every document that you are submitting at least should be the original or even a certified true copy of that particular file, just in case they decide to verify. They can see that you are submitting the right document. Most times photocopies can get you into trouble because you are not being asked to submit hard copies during this application process. So all they need of you is to scan those documents, the original versions, to show that these are the documents that show that you are financially solvent when it comes to your proof of funds. If you decide to show any admission letter or sponsorship letter, go with the original one that was sent to you. If you are using a bank statement, use the original one that was sent to you, the colored one with the letterhead on it. And if you are getting funds coming from multiple sources, my advice is always to have a letter of explanation of proof of funds to show how that money is all coming together. Because I know most students try to get funds from different sources. So try to have a letter to explain your situation to the visa officer. And I know most people will be asking me how a typical letter of explanation of proof of funds will look like. So what I will do is I'll add a link in the description column to a sample that at least you can click on. Now, once you know at least the amount of money you need to show for your proof of funds, choosing the right documents to help you submit and prove that you have enough proof of funds, done all the translations, written all the documents, the next step will be now to submit your study permit application. If you've done all this, trust me, you'll be able to prove to at least the visa officer that you have enough proof of funds to take care of yourself during your study in Canada. I know it's not easy to at least explain yourself to somebody in documents that you have enough funds to at least take care of yourself, but trust me, if you go the extra mile and make sure that all the possible questions that the visa officer will be asking, you have answered them in your application, it will get your study permits approved. I know a lot of people have done it and it has worked out for them. If you put in the work, trust me, you will make the visa officer's work easier. If you make his work easier, it will be easier for him to approve you. If you got value out of this video, can you hit the subscribe button so you can join this family as we learn together, and also hit the like button so YouTube will see value in this video, and also share it with other family and friends who might be coming to Canada, so at least they can pick 1 or 2 things from it. And also, if you also have other ways that you're able to prove your proof of funds in your study permit application, do well to put it in the comment section so that we can all learn together and grow together. Until the next video, cheers.